Welcome to Built for Love, a podcast about dating with intention, loving with purpose, and navigating relationships with depth. Each episode, we break past what no longer serves us and get clear on what we truly need in love. Welcome to the path back to you, to love, to self, to truth. Because love isn't something we chase, it's something we're built for. Hey there, you beautiful souls, and welcome to Built for Love. I'm your host, Javier Ortega, and today we're exploring the cosmic side of love and relationships with a special guest, Regina. Regina is an astrological counselor and tarot reader with over 25 years of experience, combining astrology, psychology, and soul evolution to help people better understand themselves and their relationships. She specializes in a Plutonian approach using Pluto, Saturn, and the lunar nodes to guide individuals towards their highest potential. If you've ever wondered how astrology can shape your love life, this episode is for you. So let's get into it. Regina, I'm really excited for this conversation. Before we dive into everything, how did you first get into astrology and what drew you to this deeper approach of life?
Well, I was in college and I remember just, good old Barnes and Noble, and I read this. I got my first book, it's Linda Goodman's Sun Signs, and it just something clicked, and it just felt like home. It felt like I finally found something that I could really just dive into. And then I moved to Seattle, and I found classes there out of, I was just looking, and it was on, back then Craigslist was a thing. And 2.5 years later, I was just, I was in, and I am now an official astrologer, and but it's never ending. I feel like there's so much more to learn. And now it's finally becoming more popular, and it's really awesome with the younger generation to be like really into it, because it validates what I've known for the last 25 years
Right,
or
that's
30.
so special. I love that. I love hearing that. It validates that.
Mhm.
It's the awareness of astrology is like you said, it's heightened and it's such a powerful thing. It's a lot of people see it as like a description of them, and it's supposed to be accurate, but I see it as awareness so that you can get to know yourself a little bit better, and then from there be able to move towards the direction that you want to be in.
Yeah, I think self-awareness is the first step to getting to know yourself, if that's what you want. I mean, we don't have to do it,
Right.
but at least you're given, you're given the guidebook. You could say the directions,
Yeah.
the owner's manual in a sense,
Right, right. No, I love that. Yeah, it creates a deeper awareness, and even for myself, like I wasn't that I've always been interested in it, but it didn't really resonate until actually about this past year, where I just became so sensitive to what was happening astrologically, and going into like the basics of like my chart. Like I don't know how to read an actual chart, but the descriptions of like the different where my signs are on the different planets.
Right.
Definitely that awareness made everything make more sense as to why I was reacting and acting the way I was during what was going on, and
Okay.
just having that awareness allowed me to then be like, okay, so it's one thing if I'm like sinking in quicksand and I don't know and I'm trying to get out, and
Right.
I'm trying to get out the way I would get out of water, or the way I would get out of, I don't know, milk
Mhm.
or oil or whatever, and
Yeah.
grass. And when you have the awareness that you're in quicksand, then okay, this is what I do in quicksand, right? And so
Right.
it just, again, awareness is such a powerful key to getting to know yourself better, and also being able to move through life. I wouldn't say smoother, but more aware. Like we,
Aware if it's yes, but what I've noticed
Mhm.
is a lot of people might figure it out or get told, okay, this, and this, and but it's sometimes it's really hard, our soul,
Yeah,
what our egos get in the way,
Mm,
of what maybe our soul and karma are meant to teach us. Sometimes our egos are just way too like, nope, can't do it right now. Because, you got to get rid of the ego in order to kind of get in there, you could say.
right, right.
So,
No, absolutely. I've had an ego death myself. That it's a painful
right.
process, but it is.
Sure is.
It definitely it gets you out of your own way. That's what it
It
is.
does.
Is you get out of
It
your own
really
way.
does.
So,
I agree.
how much does astrology actually influence compatibility? Is it more than just sun signs?
It's definitely more than sun signs. Your sun sign is your ego, basically. So I would look at your moon sign with the other person, and your Venus and Mars. Those are the top three. Um, and I know it's cliche, but there's a reason why it's cliche, is because, yes, Venus is your love language. And so it's
Mm,
how you give and receive love. Your Mars is how you communicate, and it's kind of your anger, and it's also like your sexuality. So obviously that plays a part in a
right.
relationship. And then your moon sign is what your emotional needs are. And obviously that's very important, but you can go your whole life and never know what your emotional needs are because you're too
Mm,
busy giving everybody what they need, and you don't even know what you need. And that can get tricky. So I think when I look at two people's charts for like a couples chart or a synastry chart, those are the things I look at. And so what are each other's emotional needs, and how are they talking to each other about it? Are they going to
gotcha.
argue depending on the signs, or are their emotional needs completely like, different from one another? So it's like a combination of all that, and you go from there.
So, are certain zodiac signs naturally more compatible, or does it depend on all those
Yeah.
factors, right? So, if
Well,
mhm, go ahead.
I would say yes, and that would be more like elemental if you want to like think
Okay.
about, air, fuels fire, right? You can't really have fire without air. It
Mm,
kind of gives it, without oxygen, there's no fire. And so they're really compatible. And then earth, think about water with earth. Water quenches, earth. So if you look at it in a very simplistic elemental way, that's the first step to compatibility, is that part. And if you get people who are, obviously there's plenty of people out there that are like fire and earth and all that. It's just going to be a little different because the way they do things are going to come from a different angle. And so that's when you go deeper and are like, okay, well, let me see. Maybe their moon signs are the same, or maybe their moon signs are very compatible. And so I'll give you an example. My parents, my mom is a Leo, my
okay.
father's a Taurus. Those two don't really get along naturally, if you think about it, because they're both stubborn, and it's fire and earth,
Earth.
right?
Okay. I was about to ask, what is Taurus?
But they both have Pisces moons. So
Oh.
that makes them, so where they come together is in that part, so that's why sun signs aren't always the end all be all,
So they
you
come
know.
together. You said moons is the emotions, right? So
Yes, so they
emotionally,
understand each other emotionally, and that's how they probably have made it 51 years, you know.
right. That's beautiful.
So so it's something like that.
Okay, okay. That makes total sense. So so how do you feel would you say like within the elements like water signs tend to resonate really well with water signs, fire signs with fire signs? Is that like a given?
I mean, it can be, but of course, not every fire sign's going to get along with, because that's when our egos kind of kick in, and ooh, you get two Leos together, and if two, and each one wants their own, like, look at me, you're gonna get some tension there. Um, but it, I would say it's what I find really funny or fascinating is same sign couples. The most are Virgos. I see so many Virgo couples that are they're both are Virgos. That's the most consistent one out of all the signs that are same sign couples. It's
Mm.
always Virgos,
Why do you think that
always.
is?
And I'm like, Virgos are very particular and they analyze and they're just meticulous. And I think that when you're with another Virgo, they understand that, and it's like okay to be, a certain way. Like you need things to be like a certain way, and you're perfectionists but really it's more Virgos are ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is our communication planet. So Virgos tend to be very analytical.
Mm.
And if you get another person that understands that and is also analytical, you just can naturally analyze together.
Right,
And it
right.
works out. It's just fascinating to me. I love that though. Every time I'm like, "Oh, there," and I'm like, "Of course." It's just
That
interesting.
makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about astrology and dating?
I would say when they look at just the sun sign, and then they're going by like a newspaper horoscope. They go by like in Cosmopolitan and you read your horoscope and you're just going by, oh, you're this. Like my birthday is May 24th and I'm a Gemini. And when people say they ask you, when's your birthday? And or what sign are you? And I'm like, I'm a Gemini. And I mean, I immediately get the like, oh, you're two-faced, and it's like, oh, there's so much more to me than that. And the other sign that gets that is Scorpios.
Yeah,
You tell somebody you're a Scorpio, and they're immediately like, oh, okay. It's like, oh no. So I would say that's a highly misconception because we're all different, Of course, we
right.
have those traits, but we have so much more as well. So.
No, that makes sense. So have you ever seen two people who were astrologically incompatible but had a great relationship? And what what made that work if you have?
Um, well, I would say I've seen like Scorpio Aries relationships. I've seen a couple of those and they're both very intense signs, right? Because they're Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, which is he's the god of war in Roman,
Oh,
and then or you get Mars or I'm sorry, Pluto's the ruler of the underworld and Mars is the god of war. So you think about it in those terms and you're like, whoa, those are some two intense people. And and you would think on the surface that's not going to be compatible because they're going to be too like they're wanting to demolish each other.
mm-hmm.
Um, but my two friends, they've been together like 20 years and they are very happy. And I think I haven't done their charts, but I know for a fact they have to have something that smooths them over, that they have water in there somewhere because there's
Mm,
no way those two signs on a ego level are going to match because they're two, Aries is very let's go, let's do this, and just angst. And Scorpio's like, I want to dig deep and find out what's really going on underneath. And they're just not naturally compatible. But you get, like I said, you get into the deeper part of their chart and not you're gonna find it. You're just gonna find it. There's no way you're gonna find it. I get proven every time I do someone's chart and I'm still amazed. And it's been like 25, 30 years, and I'm still like, oh, I still when I see it and I'm right and I'm still blown away by it. It never gets old,
right.
so
I love
it's
that.
awesome.
So now that we're talking about that though, and kind of want to take it back a little bit, we talked about Gemini and Scorpios being like the uh-oh signs for people. Who are they most compatible with? Just in sun signs.
Um, I would say Geminis are really compatible with air signs. Like I have a ton of Libra friends.
Okay.
Like all my friends are like really close friends are Libras. Um, because they're air signs. So air and air understand like let's see. So Libras and Aquarians are the other air signs with Gemini. And so there's something about air signs where you can just talk and you don't have to be intense and it can just stay fluffy, and nobody's going to get deep and, that energy doesn't match because Scorpios really want to get to the bottom of things. They really want to understand you on a deep, deep level. So they got to be with someone who can also go there and allow that. Like Pisces, Pisces and Scorpios are probably very compatible because Pisces are mutable and they're both water.
Okay.
You get a air sign with a water sign, the air might feel suffocated because because the air sign is more mentally focused and the water sign is more emotionally focused. So sometimes it feels too intense for an air sign. It's like, why do we have to live in the freaking underworld? Can't we just go up and like get some air and walk around, But those some of those water signs, they just want to always be in their feelings and you have to come up for air, so to say, So
Right.
that's where it really plays a part. And both sides have to understand that because sometimes you get the one side, but they're like, but it's my feelings and and it's like I don't okay, but I don't want to live there.
Right. Right.
Let's there's more to it. Be more balanced. It's all about balance,
Hmm.
really, at the end. It's all about balance.
Right. I love
So,
that.
and every sign has a shadow side.
Oh, what
So,
is that?
um, so you're gonna see, and so that depends on the evolution of the person, of their soul. Like, how they say, oh, uh, I feel like some people you can tell that are older souls, like they've been around the block. And so they're a little more grounded and understanding,
Hmm.
while you get some people who are very in their ego. And I would say those people are probably younger souls,
Okay. That makes
because our
sense.
ego is the first thing you get to, right? It's when you go deeper that you get into the other stuff.
Right.
So that's how I can kind of tell where someone's at.
I 100% resonate with that. I've done my dive into old souls, young souls, journey of souls, type of thing, journey.
Yeah. It's
So,
fascinating, right?
and it's expansive. It really is. It gets you to really understand everyone around you more, without
Right.
judgment, and also showing up connected to everyone more. Um,
Oh yeah. And getting past, like you said, putting your ego aside. And I think that takes wisdom.
mhm.
And you only get that from experience. Like, um, I don't know. I feel like sometimes when you're around people who are very, like it's their pride. I would say pride
Mm,
would be an ego thing, right?
right.
And so if somebody's so caught up in their pride, um, they're getting in their own way of the bigger picture, so that might be someone with a younger soul because your pride has no business in your evolution. It's not going to get you anywhere when you're just too proud to like be accountable, if that makes
It
sense.
does. It absolutely makes
Yeah.
sense. So going back to the placements, you mentioned this earlier in the conversation. What are the most important placements in someone's birth chart when it comes to love and relationships?
Well, let's see. I would say your moon. If I were to pick one sign or one planet out of all of them, I would say your moon is the most important because it is where what our emotional needs are. And if you like I said earlier, your emotional needs are extremely important. And if you go in your whole lifetime not understanding what they are, it's like your the five love languages.
Mm,
That's pretty much what's your moon sign. I mean,
gotcha.
it's so fascinating. Um, because so astrology would say your moon, but in I guess what is that, pop psychology or whatever you want to call it, it's what's your love language. And you know I'm a Gemini, so what's my love language? Words of affirmation, because it's meant I like to be mentally stimulated. So other people, um my moon is in Cancer, so I'm really sensitive. So at the end, it makes sense that I need words of affirmation because it's probably like, yeah, I need someone to be a little nice to me. Otherwise, I might go in the corner and cry. You know? So it's, I think that your moon sign's so important. And a lot of times when we're younger, when you're young in relationships, you just want to to please the other person to make them
Mm,
love you, right?
right.
That's the common thing every I don't care, every single person has done it where they cater to the other person and that other person is like, "Oh, sure, okay, give me everything I need, but if you don't tell me what you need and then
Mm,
I can't give it to you."
that.
And if the person is like, "Well, I don't even know what I need," you know, my need is you. And it's like, "Well, no, your needs aren't that other person. You have needs and let's talk about what they are." And um, you need to be able to communicate that to your significant other. And if they can't match it, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but they're not going to be the best fit for you.
Right.
And that's all it means. Or you're going to be okay with what they can or cannot give you. And
Mm,
you have to accept that. And and a lot of people pretend that they're okay with, "Oh, that's okay. I don't need that, blah 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 blah." And then a year later, they're upset. They're like, "Oh, they never do this for me, and I just wish they would." It's like, but you knew this. You knew that they were never gonna. It's like you can't get blood from a stone.
mm,
So you either accept them for who they are and what they can or cannot give you. You either accept it and know that you're not going to get that from them, or you go, "Okay, you know what? I love you. I think you're awesome, but you're not meant to be my partner." But
right.
it's not personal.
You
It's
can't get
never
blood from a
personal.
stone. I like that. I like your references. So let's go in a different direction. I'm being a little selfish here on my on this episode. So speaking of needs, as I
Hmm.
am currently in the process of dating, I wanted to dive into my chart and see if we could discuss what I need to know about my needs or anything that what are some compatibility traits I should look for in others.
And I have your chart. Let me see. I'm going to pull it up.
Thank you.
Um,
Earlier when I laughed out loud too when you said, as a moon Cancer, you're like, uh, like, don't be mean. I'm gonna go cry in the corner. I'm a Sun Cancer, Moon Cancer. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, my Venus is in Cancer.
okay, so you have, yes, you're right. Your sun, your moon, and your Venus are all like packed in together in Cancer. So, I mean, you you like to be the leader but also the mama bear. Like
Mm,
you're definitely maternal. You have a lot of maternal. You want to take care of everybody. Um, the thing is you are needing to learn how to be about yourself. You know, um, you can't like how when like nurture someone to death, if you could say that. Like, sometimes, and I've done this too. It's like where you feel like you give and give and give and give, and you feel like, well, if I just keep giving, they'll eventually, give me what I want. And it's like, well, yes, but are you giving? It has to be someone who's receiving.
mm,
Sometimes you get people who just take, and there's a difference between receiving and taking. And I would say, um, you're somebody, that you need to hear, you need to be nurtured too, but I don't know if you allow it so much, like you probably are uncomfortable being nurtured because you feel more in control when you're the one nurturing, and you're like, no, 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 I don't need, I'm fine, but it's like, no, no, here's some, you need to, take care of yourself too. You can't take care of everybody, it's learning how to navigate through all of that. But you're such a good, you're so good at it. Like you've been doing it for centuries, you've been doing it for lifetimes, being in that nurturing role. Like you have you're very in tune with that feminine, with the feminine. And I
Mhm.
feel like you are learning how to be more in the masculine, which means whether we like it or not, more leader, more, go-getter. Um, and you need to find the balance. You're still like this, with the nurturing. And so it's just basically know who you're going to nurture, who deserves it, honestly.
Mhm.
Because being a fellow Cancer moon, I've definitely nurtured people who didn't deserve it, and then you get resentful and you build it, you hold it
Right.
all in, um, and then it ends up coming out in a passive aggressive way, and on the
Guilty.
shadow side, on a bad day, you're going to end up being like, I'm fine, your dinner's in the microwave. You know, or something. I don't know, like you're gonna feel resentful because that person isn't doing they're just taking. And you know it in your heart, but your reaction would be to just keep giving. Give more.
Right.
Give more. Hope, and that person's like, well, you meet those people, you meet those takers, and they're there to teach us a lesson.
Right.
They're there to teach us to have boundaries with who deserves us and who doesn't, I would say.
I
So you
100% resonate with all of that.
yeah, yeah, you would probably be compatible with probably earth or another water. I would say fire's gonna, if you ever were to be with a fire sign, they're gonna they're gonna teach you a lesson. Fire signs will be there to teach you a lesson, but they're not going to be very accommodating to your sensitive side in general, in a very general way. I would say earth signs are going to be more caring and reciprocative of, because you're very grounded too. I mean, you're a grounded person, so you need someone that resonates with that. And if you just get some crazy fire sign, like unless they have earth or water in them in a general way, that they're gonna just, it's gonna be a lot. You're not gonna get your needs met, I would
Right.
say, because they're not gonna be sensitive to all of that.
This is not to call anyone out. I promise you, this is not what I'm doing. But I am looking to see. So my ex was a Sagittarius, Gemini moon, and a Scorpio rising. I mean, I can go further into his chart, but it was definitely we were very different. And that was an 11-year
Yes.
relationship. Taught me a lot. Very, very
Mm,
karmic, um, very much, yeah, like you mentioned earlier, you kind of want to keep nurturing. And a part of that is hoping that they, at some point, they'll see, how much you are
right.
giving to them and you'll receive that back. And that's
Right.
why you keep giving and you keep giving and you keep giving. And it's not that, you know, this person is a bad person. It's just the compatibility was
Yeah.
off. It really was.
Mm-hmm. Well, Gemini moon, I mean, so moon is your emotional, your emotional needs. A Gemini moon would be someone who needs to talk about their feelings, but not necessarily feel their feelings. Feeling their feelings is not, is like, especially being a Sag sun. A Scorpio rising is, they're going to come off as very intense or very like, but as soon as you get past, because your rising sign, the purpose of your rising sign is it's our front door to our personality. So it's what we present to the world. It doesn't mean that's who we are. It just means it's our mask. So maybe, it's, but you having all that cancer, no, they're going to just want to talk about it, and then they're going to tell you you're needy,
Right.
because you're putting out their fire. You're putting out, you're drowning, or they're going to perceive it as drowning. You're too much, and because their emotional needs aren't to be nurtured.
Right.
Their emotional needs are to talk about it, if that makes sense.
It is. It does. It does. And it's funny because it's like, you say that they're going to think you're needy, but I'm like, I've learned that no, I'm not needy. My needs aren't being met. There's a difference.
Right. But when you don't know that, and you don't know what your emotional needs are, and you have, and having a Cancer moon is a blessing and a curse, because it's a blessing because that's what the moon is rules Cancer. So it's very, very comfortable in Cancer, but it's going to make us be sensitive and maternal and nurturing. And, um, you get someone who's like, that's just not what they need. That's just not what they need. And so they're not going to perceive it the same way you're perceiving it, as in like, but I want to take care of you and la la. They're like, I don't need to be taken care of. And, if you don't understand what you need, you're going to come across as needy,
Right.
you know,
100%.
and that's to anybody who doesn't know or understand what their emotional needs are, because they're going to just be like, well, can you give it to me? Well, can you give it to me? Well, can you give it to me? And they're finding all the wrong people,
Mm.
you know, because they just want to be, if you're okay, if you're just like, I just want to be loved, right? And it's like, okay, but that's not, sure, everybody wants to be loved. I mean, of course, um, but there's more to it than just, I want to be loved. But if you don't even know what that is, well, how do you want to be loved?
Right.
Is a huge, it's huge. It's like, well, okay, great, but how? And so for your ex being a Gemini moon, he's going to be someone who's probably more mentally, like more mentally stimulated by the thoughts of feelings,
Hmm.
but not necessarily the feelings. Like sitting in the feelings is uncomfortable,
Right.
you know.
Right. Yeah. And that
You're
makes
like,
a
what am I
lot of
doing here?
sorry, sorry. That makes a lot of sense. My ex after that ex was Pisces, Gemini, and Leo, also a Gemini moon. And so as you're explaining that, it resonates a lot because, when it came to me expressing my emotions and things like that, it's like, well, why don't you want to feel them, like, or why don't you want to like sit with them? But that's and again, this is why astrology has expanded me so much, because I have been able to dive in and learn, like, sometimes we think it's a little bit more black and white, and we think, I want, I'm gonna love them the way that I want to be loved, right? And
Right.
in hopes that
Oh,
they love me the
100%.
way that I want to be loved. But it's not black and white. We all process emotions differently, process anger differently, process
Hmm.
all of it differently, and that's where like this awareness really makes a huge difference.
But you nailed it on the head when you said, um, what we're giving is what we want back.
Hmm.
And, and that's why we have to know that and know, okay, well, this is who I am, and this is how I give, and this is how I love. And when you start to feel, uh-oh, this person's not, I'm not feeling good, like this doesn't make my heart flutter. This makes my heart sink,
Hmm.
um, that's your cue to where, okay, maybe I need to rein it in a little bit, because I don't know if they're going to understand, or they're not going to give me back. I'm 50 years old and I'm still learning this stuff, so it's like,
Right.
you get better at it as life gets, as you experience it, but it's a boundary issue, because then
Hmm.
you have to understand that you have to have a boundary with that other person. Be like, okay, well, you know what? I'm not going to dive in anymore. What's the point?
Right.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that other person just because they can't recognize that they're unable to give you
I
that.
agree.
They're not a bad person, they're just not meant to perhaps be your person.
Right. And I say that all the time lately, because I mean, there's so much truth in that. And
It's hard though, because when we want something and we really like somebody and we really, really want them to just fit,
hmm.
and they just don't. I mean, and it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to, like, it's okay. I'll let go. It's so hard. It's hard to do. So it's easier than said than done, but when you can do it, you are gifting yourself with, so you're saving yourself from a lot of ego pain, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. And you know, that's the beauty of life too. It's like every relationship teaches you something about yourself, right? And
I know.
it's like
That's yes.
we it's amazing when you finally understand like, oh, I'm the common denominator of like what I've been attracting, you know? And
No kidding.
a lot of
Oh my
that
gosh.
is not that you're intentionally doing it, but a lot of it's
Right.
subconscious. A lot of it is coming from like the healing that needs to be done, right? We live in a society where we grow up as children and it's like you are to, you know, don't speak or this like there's a lot of like not being seen and being heard as a child. And so most people, if not all, we at some point or another we're seeking validation in life.
Everybody needs it. And as a counselor, um, that is my main, that is my number one. Anybody and everybody needs to feel they're not crazy and that somebody, they need to be, they do. It's, I mean, and this goes beyond astrology. This just goes in life, being a human. Um, you, if somebody feels validated, they're more likely to not, they're going to have that defensive emotional armor is going to be taken off
Mm,
because, oh, I can relax because you understand. You don't think I'm a jerk because I'm or crazy or terrible.
right.
It's, and if you can go, oh my God, that must be really hard. That's why empathy is very important, and because everybody needs to be validated. Everybody.
Right.
I mean, if you don't need validation, maybe you're a monk on, in Tibet, but your average person needs to feel like somebody understands them and then as soon as they do, you're more likely to hear perhaps some constructive work,
Right, right. And this is
like a validation sandwich.
right. This is also why this conversation is so important because it's not just about dating and romantic relationships. It's relationships in general, right? And
Right,
so it's one thing to like, yes, you know, validation is important to us because it validates connection, really. And if you have
right.
connection from there, you have, you know, that can grow into so many different things. Again, just even just as friends or as family.
Hmm.
But at the same time, you know, these relationships sometimes teach you that you're looking for validation in places that may not be healthy for you either, right? Like,
Correct.
for me, I was looking for it because I didn't receive that as a child, and I grew up
Exactly.
very lonely, and I grew up very, bullied, and so I didn't receive that. So I was always trying to make people feel very seen, very heard, very validated. But I
Hmm.
also, it wasn't coming from an authentic place because it was coming from me trying to fill that void, fill that
Well,
space.
it had a price tag.
Yeah.
I was,
Yeah. It's like
it had a
gambling
little bit of a
in a
price
way.
tag. It was like, well, I'm giving you all this so you can give it to me and tell
Right.
me I just want because you want someone to validate you.
Right.
And that's where things get tricky is
Hmm.
100%. It's not coming from an authentic place. And if you want to give, then you want to give. But as soon as you start expecting that person to worship you because you're giving, you're not doing it for the right
Right.
reason.
Right. And
And that's a hard lesson to learn.
and I'm
It's a hard
again, like you can see through my chart, like I'm a very like empathetic, passionate, nurturing person, right? But even me, I didn't realize that's what I was looking for until, I had a twin flame experience, and it teaches you a lot. It surfaces a lot of the things that you need to heal and work on, and that was one of the things. It really guided me to dive into a lot of childhood, that inner child work, healing,
Yeah,
and going back and seeing things as the painful experiences, the traumatic experiences as they are, right? Because you can't go back and like validate yourself, right? Like if you didn't have that validation, you
right.
didn't have it. If you weren't seen, if you didn't have that attention, you didn't have it, right? But having that
Right.
awareness, just like these tools that take us deeper, right? Whether it's astrology, whether it's you do tarot,
Anything.
whether it's there's all these different avenues that we can go in are specifically there to dive into the deeper work, to understand yourself, and also to have that awareness to move towards that person that you desire to be.
Right.
Good.
And then you will attract what you need when you need it. And if the more you understand your authentic being, the more you're going to attract other people. But when you're not doing it for the right reasons, you're going to attract takers. You just are. I've been down that road too. And you're 100%. I did the exact same thing. I wasn't doing it from an authentic place. I just wanted them to do I just wanted them to recognize me and to be like, you're worthy,
Right.
you're lovable,
Right.
you know. And I didn't get it because it was the universe being like, because you're not doing it. I was doing it for, there was a price tag attached. And then I'd get all upset, when they wouldn't, when they were like, no, I don't want that, and it was like, why am I attracting emotionally unavailable people?
Right.
Why am I attracted to that? And it's like, well, because I'm emotionally unavailable,
Right.
and, and it's because I'm not in tune. I'm emotionally unavailable to myself, and so as soon as I started like caring about me and like really turning it around, now I'm getting people who are a lot more nurturing
Right.
in my life. And it's like, and then when you get old enough and wise enough, you can go, well, thank God I didn't end up with them, because holy cannoli, that would have been the worst experience ever. And so, you know, it's sometimes the most painful breakups or relationships are the ones that are going to teach you so much. And in hindsight, you have to trust, like, you know what? I have to trust that this is all happening for something that's bigger than me,
Right.
but gosh, it sure does help you when you can do that. When you can just get past, again, right back to where we started, put your ego away. And it's not personal, right? Like the four agreements, it's
Right. Oh,
not
I love the four
personal.
agreements.
Yeah, like it has saved me so much, because it is Cancer moons are we take it personally. I mean, we just do. It's like, how dare you?
No.
Um, and it's so hard not to take it personally, but it's not about, they have issues too,
Right.
and they can't give you what you need for their own reasons, and it has absolutely nothing to do with you. Like I have been told, in the past, like, oh, you're so great, and it's not about you, it's about me, and you get all like, oh, whatever, shut up, but it's the truth, they have their hangups, and it's just not it's not the match that's meant to be,
Right.
you know. It's hard though.
I will. I'm. I feel like I should say this. So I will throw in. One of the things that I've also discovered in my healing these last few months is that there is a thing spiritually when you are doing the work called an ego death. And
Yes.
I used to think like, okay, at some point we get to a point in this life where we do not operate from the ego, right? Through
Right.
ego deaths and whatnot. And I realized that, yes, I had an ego death, and that was like a big shift in like I tell people I'm not living the next chapter of my life. Like I'm a whole new book in the series of this life, right? And so that
Right.
included an ego death, but the ego's still there. And
Of course.
I've learned that instead of trying to like push it and force it out and get it to shut up and have no voice, that's actually why the ego is there, because it's there to
Correct.
protect you. It's there to
Right.
protect the parts of you that didn't receive validation, that didn't receive being seen or heard. So you're actually fighting yourself. And the more you try to fight it, it's like it's trying to fight for you. So it's contradicting. I've
Well,
learned
it has a purpose.
it
Our
does.
egos are there for a reason. Our purpose, it's the purpose to give us confidence and self-respect.
Mm,
It's our
boundaries.
self-respect and boundaries, to be like, oh, heck no. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, no, I deserve to be treated Like when somebody's ugly or mean, there's, our ego is what's like, okay. Now, it's just balance though, keeping it in check.
Right,
That's
right.
all it is.
Be
Balance. It's
the way I see it is
balance.
like befriending the ego. Like
Correct.
like giving yourself, you giving your ego validation, not in a like cocky way or anything like that, but giving it validation of like, okay, I understand that you're here for me, allows you to
Hmm.
be able to work with it a lot more. It
Right.
gives you the awareness.
Well, and it gives you a sense of like when you're proud of yourself for doing something,
Right.
like, oh my God, when I graduated from school, I was like proud of myself. That was my ego, and it was like, but I had, but that's healthy. Our egos are healthy when we're doing it out of self-respect is not cocky,
Hmm.
you know. Um, but again, it's balance. It's just knowing how to balance your ego with, ooh, that was, you know, I don't know if I kind of messed up.
Right.
There's it's accountability, but it is your self-respect 100%. Oh my goodness. Yeah. We
I
can't
agree.
live without, we have to have self-confidence. This world is way too harsh, to not, and people will take advantage of that, when you
Right.
don't have a strong sense of self.
Right. Okay, okay. So all that we we dived in discussing my moon. What other what other areas in my chart would you say, would help with me being aware when it comes to like seeing if I'm compatible with people or who I'm compatible
See,
with or on dates.
um, I do think that you just need somebody who can, you need someone who's a good communicator and who's grounded. You need a mature person, a mature soul who can recognize they have to be grounded, because uh, this is getting more advanced, but it's a Earth Grand Trine. And trines are good things, and Earth is um, like it's very complementing to water, and you have a Virgo rising, so which is Earth. Your security is emotional security, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And your Mars, which is where our sex drive is, and our like our, how we communicate and our anger, it's Taurus, and Taurus is very grounded. Taurus is about slow and steady wins the race. So you're not somebody to have. You don't get angry. You get more like I'm gonna mental note that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to keep that in mind. But when you finally get there, there's hell to pay because it's like the Tauruses, they're so grounded and they're so patient. You're very patient with people. Little things just don't bother. You see past the little things. Um, but, again, there's a point where you're like, okay, that's just ridiculous, and now I'm mad. Now you made me mad. Um, but then you'll go back and you'll start over again and be patient again because it's just not worth it.
Right.
So you need to be with somebody who isn't going to take advantage of that patience, you know, and who's going to be more affectionate. You need someone who's affectionate, I would say too.
What planet did you say that Taurus was?
Mars is in
Mars.
Taurus.
Okay,
Your
so
Mars.
would that be me looking for compatibility in other people's Mars? Like, what would you say is compatible to Taurus?
Well, Mars, your Venus and Taurus, Venus is in Cancer and your Mars is in Taurus, so that's water, earth. They're getting along really well, so you need to find somebody that is complementary to that energy. So I would say like a moon in Taurus, perhaps,
Okay. Oh, okay.
you know, uh, maybe an earth sign moon. Their moon is in an earth sign, or their Venus is in an earth sign. Um, so you need someone to handle that pace as well. Because if you're with someone who's like, the rabbit and the hare, the turtle and the hare, right? It's not a marathon. It is a marathon. It's not a race. We're
Hmm.
not sprinting to the end. We are taking our time and we're learning and we're appreciating the journey. You need someone that recognizes the journey, you know, maybe somebody a little older could be beneficial. I think if you were to date, dating someone younger might not, you know, maybe
That's interesting.
figuratively and literally, but you might be I would say a person, who's at least older, either in their soul or older on this earth, is probably you need somebody who's more mature,
Right.
a mature person who understands that it's a process and we're learning, and not someone who's just always fire, 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 on the go, on the go, on the go. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Woo! It's
Mhm.
like, no, that doesn't resonate with you at all. You know, like it's just like it's annoying. I would think that for you it'd be like, ugh, like it's just it's exhausting to even their energy is exhausting,
Right.
in a sense, because that's just not where you resonate.
What?
And that's great. That's awesome. Go them. We need people like that in the world. We
Yeah.
need people that are on fire, you know. Everybody has their purpose, right? But but whoever your person is going to have to be like, it's not going to be that. Mm-mm.
What about air signs? I'm just curious.
Um, Air is would work, but again, they might be too heady. Like, I think initially it'll be fun. You'd be like, "Oh yeah, we can talk and I can talk for hours." Um, but the minute it comes to like, let's get in there, they're gonna be like, "Oh no, I don't really no."
Mm,
They
that really resonates.
it's not, again, not personal. It's not personal. They're just not comfortable necessarily. They're just la 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 la, I mean, it's not going to be your best fit,
Okay.
I would say.
Okay.
Not going to be the worst. Again, I'm an air sign and look at me, so but I can tell you I've dated water signs and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, like stop." It's just not like, and um so it just, I learned that about myself too. So, I mean, yeah, air signs are fine. You're a Virgo rising, so even though Virgo is a earth sign, they're ruled by Mercury. So they're very mentally inclined. That would work for you in a certain dynamic, like in friendships and maybe work related,
Okay.
but it's not going to work in romantic partnerships because you're going to want to go deeper and they might not have that capacity,
Okay.
you know?
Noted.
But you never know. Gosh, again,
Right.
this is general. This is a very general, you
Yes.
know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is all just for awareness again. Like, and then you also see, again, I had tendencies and may still have, but not as much as before because I'm aware of it, of getting bitter, or, tendencies
Right,
of being too emotional to the point where I was like trapping myself and getting in my own way because I didn't have the awareness that, okay, they're this sign. That's not how they're going to process it, no matter what you try to, no matter how emotional
right.
you get about it.
They don't resonate with your emotions about it. And
Right.
and then that's where that's the accountability. And that's where it comes in to be like, okay, maybe it's not all their fault. Maybe
Right.
I participated in some of this dynamic. It takes two to tango, right?
Hmm. It doesn't help if you're trying to make them be aware either. Like you can't. That's that. Then you're
No,
manipulating, and at that point, like
correct.
it's not healthy.
And that's hard. It's hard to admit. It's hard to admit that, like, oh, okay, you know what? I did that to manipulate them a little bit.
Hmm.
I need to work on that.
Right.
It, you're like, yikes.
Right. No. Yeah. Like it's a thing to have to face yourself. Right.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Regina. I appreciate that. Um.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's really. There's a lot of good nuggets up in there. In my chart.
Mm.
Okay. So
Yeah.
now let me ask you, what advice would you give someone who keeps dating people they're astrologically compatible with, but still struggle in relationships?
I would say again, it all comes down to understanding what your emotional needs are, because they might be compatible, but if they're toxic, then then they're the problem, right?
Hmm.
We're the problem if we're not doing our own work. And the other
Right.
person, you attract people that are perfect, but you're toxic. So again, it's getting a very skewed version of your emotional needs. You're doing it in a manipulative way, perhaps. So it's about understanding boundaries and just understanding, like, it's okay to have needs, really. Some people, they don't know how to do that because no one has ever given them that.
Mm.
So if somebody doesn't recognize that energy, like, well, how do I not abandon myself?
Mm.
It starts with that. And like, when I lived in San Francisco and I was getting my graduate degree in counseling, they made us go to counseling, because they were always like, well, if you're going to help others, you have to be you have to be in the chair too. And what I recognized when I was in therapy, and she told me, she goes, oh, she used the word self-abandonment when she would basically hold me accountable to when I was giving too much to the wrong person. And she was like, oh, you self-abandoned, you know? And ever since that, that's what I utilize that wording too, because that's exactly what it
I
is.
love that.
When you're abandoning yourself, and that's never going to feel good. And then you're going to end up
Right.
constantly projecting your hurt onto your partner. And that's not who you are. That's just your hurt. And you're abandoning yourself because you're not acknowledging what you need.
That
You're
right
just,
there. Yep.
so self-abandonment is a big one in hurt, in pain,
Right.
you know. So I don't know how to, I guess that would be the best way to describe
No,
it.
that's a great way to describe it. I mean, I think that sometimes you don't even realize self abandonment is a thing. And so then
Not
hearing
at all.
that just, can turn on a light bulb in someone's head and start to like think about that here and there and then find moments when they're abandoning themselves. So I think that's great. So,
Yeah.
how can someone use astrology to date with more intention and self-awareness if they're just starting off with astrology?
Well, it's easy to just look up someone's moon sign. You don't have to know all the inner things of like what time you were born and where. You can easily just look at someone's their date of birth and find out. And I think that's a good place to start.
Mhm.
You know, um, we are all more than our sun sign.
Mhm.
You know, we're so much more than that. So don't judge a book by its cover, I guess you could say.
Love
You
that.
know, but again, if you if you want a good partner and you want all these things, you be a good partner. You do it. It doesn't matter. That person could be like, I always say, timing is everything. And if you can't meet, if you can meet literally like, the most perfect human on the planet that was like literally made to be with you. But if you're immature or whatever, you're not doing helping yourself, it doesn't matter who that person is.
Mhm.
You're not good enough for them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really just about, and not to sound like it's all about you, but it is. We're the ones left at the end of the day. We only have ourselves. We have to live with ourselves and what we do and how we act and how we treat others and blah blah blah. It always comes back to, if you're a good person and you're working on yourself, it's okay to be imperfect in that journey, um, because you're doing your best, right? Going
Yep.
back to the four agreements, you're doing your best. So it's literally about, how can I be a better person? And that's, every day I say my gratitude, and I always say, may I be better today than I was yesterday. And I say that almost every day. because I that's exactly what I want to be. I want to be better than I was yesterday, and whatever that means, however that means. And I want to be a better person, so then I attract better people, you
Right.
know. But it's never going to end if you don't work on you.
Yep.
You know, it always comes back to you. So,
I agree. Love that. Thank you so much, Regina. So, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I love how astrology isn't just about compatibility, but about deeper self awareness and growth in relationships. Before we wrap up, is there any final thought you'd like to leave for those listening? Maybe a piece of advice for someone who wants to use astrology as a tool for love and connection?
you know, so when I was when I was learning, a lot of people don't understand that astrology is actually science, you know, and it's a lot of math. People see it as a novelty, and because, that's, but, back in the day, like back in the day, astrology was used to when to do certain things physically, like when to do surgeries, when to, you
Mm,
know, so it's just like play with it, have fun with it, enjoy it for what it provides, you know. You don't have to see it as, "Oh, I don't believe in that." Like, why? Why don't you use it as a tool and be okay and have fun with it? See it as a tool to play with and use it as a tool to understand yourself. And that's it. It's so simple and really it's there to help you be better. So why not use it? You know, and if not, if astrology is not for you, then maybe, there's 100 different things and lenses to look through. Whichever, whatever you want to, grab from, you're going to end up, it's always going to be the same, whatever it is. And that's because we are so much bigger than this realm,
right.
it goes beyond this. And
Yes.
so as long as you're doing the work on yourself to be a better person, it doesn't matter what you use. I chose astrology because it resonated with me. And then I added it to psychology and counseling, and that's what works for me. You know,
Yep.
other people do what you do, do you, boo, whatever that means.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insight. For anyone who wants to dive deeper into astrology, do you have an social media account, maybe an email that they can reach out to you? I know that you do offer services, tarot services,
Yeah.
astrology services.
Yes, my email is just my name. It's Regina Mirando at Yahoo. That's a way to get a hold of me, or my Instagram. I can teach. I used to teach astrology in San Francisco. I used to, and I loved it, So if somebody wants to learn about astrology, I do lessons as well,
That's
you know.
amazing.
So,
Thank you so much, Regina.
and I love it.
I'll also leave all of her info linked in the episode description.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Regina. And
You're welcome.
with
My pleasure.
thank you. It's very pleasure having you on. So like always, with that being said, remember love isn't something we chase, it's something we're built for. I love you guys. Till next time.